"Good night, cousin Sarah." "Good night, cousin Jack," cried Tom, taking to the mare again. "Many a mile I have to ride, and not a bit inside of me. No food or shelter this side of Exmoor, and the night will be black as pitch, I trow. But it serves me right for indulging the lad, being taken with his looks so." "Cousin Tom," said mother, and trying to get so that Annie and I could not hear her, "it would be a sad and unkinlike thing for you to despise our dwelling house. We cannot entertain you, as the lordly inns on the road do, and we have small change of victuals; but the men will go home, being Saturday, and so you will have the fireside all to yourself and the children. There are some few collops of red deer's flesh, and a ham just down from the chimney, and some dried salmon from Lynmouth Weir, and cold roast pig, and some oysters. And if none of those be to your liking, we could roast 2 woodcocks in half an hour, and Annie would make the toast for 'em. And the good folk made some mistake last week going up the country, and left a keg of old Holland cordial in the coving of the wood rick, having borrowed our Smiler without asking leave. I fear there is something unrighteous about it, but what can a poor widow do? John Fry would have taken it but for our Jack. Our Jack was a little too sharp for him. Ay, that I was. John Fry had got it, like a billet under his apron, going away in the grey of the morning, as if to kindle his fireplace. "Why, John," I said, "what a heavy log! Let me have one end of it." "Thank ye, Jan, no need for thiccy," he answered, turning his back to me. "Wife wanteth a log as will last all day, to kape the cock a zimmerin." And he banged his gate upon my knees, to make me stop and rub them. "Why, John," I said, "you got a log with round holes in the end of it. Who has been cutting gun wads? Just lift up the apron, or I will." But to return to Tom Faggus. He stopped to sup that night with us, and took a little of everything. A few oysters first, and then dried salmon, and then ham and eggs, done in a small curled rashers, and then a few collops of venison toasted, and next to that a little cold roast pig, and a woodcock on toast to finish with it, before the shieling and hot water. And having changed his wet things first, he seemed to be in fair appetite, and praised Annie's cooking mightily, with a kind of noise like a smack of his lips and a rubbing of his hands together, whenever he could spare them. He had gotten John Fry's best small clothes on, for he said he was not good enough to go into my father's, which mother kept to look at, nor man enough to fill them. And in truth my mother was very glad that he refused, when I offered them. But John was over proud to have it in his power to say that such a famous man had ever dwelt in any clothes of his, and afterwards he made show of them. For Mr. Faggus's glory, then though not so great as now it is, was spreading very fast indeed all about our neighbourhood, and even as far as Bridgewater. Tom Faggus was a jovial soul, if ever there has been one, not making bones of little things, not caring to seek evil. There was about him such a love of genuine human nature, that if a traveller said a good thing, he would give him back his purse again. It is true that he took people's money more by force than fraud, and the law, being used to the inverse method, was bitterly moved against him, although he could quote precedent. These things I do not understand, having seen so much of robbery, some legal, some illegal, that I scarcely know, as here we say, one crow's foot from the other. It is beyond me and above me to discuss these subjects, and in truth I love the law right well, when it doth support me, and when I can lay it down to my liking, with prejudice to nobody. Loyal too to the king am I, as behooves churchwarden, and ready to make the best of him as he generally requires. But after all, I could not see, until I grew much older and came to have some property, why Tom Faggus, working hard, was called a robber and a felon of great, while the king, doing nothing at all, as became his dignity, was liegig lord and paramount owner, with everybody to thank him kindly for accepting tribute. For the present, however, I learned nothing more as to what our cousin's profession was, only that my mother seemed frightened, and whispered to him now and then not to talk of something, because of the children being there, whereupon he always nodded with a sage expression, and applied himself to Hollins. "Now let us go and see Winnie, Jack," he said to me after supper. "For the most part I feed her before myself, but she was so hot from the way you drove her. Now she must be grieving for me, and I never let her grieve long." I was too glad to go with him, and Annie came slyly behind us. The filly was walking to and fro on the naked floor of the stable, for he would not let her have any straw until he should make a bed for her, and without so much as a headstall on it, for he would not have her fastened. "Do you take my mare for a dog?" he had said, when John Fry brought him a halter. And now she ran to him like a child, and her great eyes shone at the lanthorn. "Hit me, Jack, and see what she would do. I would not let her hurt thee." He was rubbing her ears all the time he spoke, and she was leaning against him. Then I made believe to strike him, and in a moment she caught me by the waistband, and lifted me clean from the ground, and was casting me down to trample upon me, when he stopped her suddenly. "What you think of that, boy? Have you horse or dog that would do that for you? Ay, and more than she will do. If I were to whistle, by and by, in the tone that tells my danger, she would break this stable door down, and rush into the room to me. Nothing will keep her from me then, stone wall or church tower. Ah, Winnie, Winnie, you little witch, we shall die together." Then he turned away with a joke, and began to feed her nicely, for she was very dainty. Not a husk of oat would she touch that had been under the breath of another horse, however hungry she might be. And with her oats he mixed some powder, fetching it from his saddle-bags. What this was I could not guess, neither would he tell me, but laughed and called it star shavings. He watched her eat every morsel of it, and with 2 or 3 drinks of pure water, ministered between whines. And then he made her bed in a foam I had never seen before, and so we said good night to her. Afterwards, by the fireside, he kept us very merrily, sitting in the great chimney corner, and making us play games with him, and all the while he was smoking tobacco in a manner I never have seen before, not using any pipe for it, but having it rolled in little sticks about as long as my finger, blunt at one end and sharp at the other. The sharp end he would put in his mouth, and lay a brand of wood to the other, and then draw a white cloud of curling smoke, and we never tired of watching him. I wanted him to let me do it, but he said, "No, my son, it is not meant for boys." Then Annie put up her lips and asked, with both hands on his knees, for she had taken to him wonderfully, "Is it meant for girls then, Cousin Tom?" But she had better not have asked, for he gave it to her to try, and she shut both eyes and sucked at it. One breath, however, was quite enough, for it made her cough so violently that Lizzie and I must thump her back until she was almost crying. To atone for that, Cousin Tom set to, and told us whole pages of stories, not about his own doings at all, but strangely enough,